Welcome to Office Revenge Hub.
They laughed at me in front of the entire executive team when I presented my idea. Not polite chuckles, real mocking laughter. And the person who laughed the loudest was my own boss. My name is Sarah Mitchell. For 4 years, I worked as a junior product manager at Vertex Digital, a tech startup in Austin that built marketing automation software. When I started there, fresh out of college, I was 22 years old, drowning in student debt, and desperate to prove myself in the tech world. Vertex was my dream job, or at least I thought it was. I was hired to support the senior product team, which basically meant I did all the grunt work nobody else wanted to do. I organized sprint planning meetings. I took notes. I compiled user feedback into spreadsheets that senior managers would skim for 30 seconds before moving on. Now, I worked late nights and weekends testing new features, writing documentation, coordinating with developers who treated me like I was invisible. My boss was a man named Trevor Hastings. He was 41, had an MBA from Northwestern, and loved reminding everyone about it. He'd worked at Google for 2 years early in his career, and he brought it up in literally every conversation. When I was at Google, we did it differently. At Google, we had better processes. Google wouldn't tolerate this kind of thinking. Trevor made it very clear from day one that I was the lowest person on the totem pole. In meetings, he'd cut me off mid-sentence to hear what the senior PMs had to say. He'd assign me tasks with impossible deadlines, then criticize me when I couldn't deliver perfection. He'd take credit for my ideas in front of leadership, then pull me aside later to remind me that ideas are cheap, execution is what matters, and you're still learning execution. But I believed in the company. I believed in the product. And stupidly, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I proved my value enough times, eventually I'd earn respect. Eventually, I'd be promoted to senior PM. Eventually, Trevor would see me as more than just the person who schedules his meetings. I stayed late every single night. While other junior employees left at 6, I was there until 9 or 10, diving deep into user analytics, studying our competitors, learning everything I could about product management. I read every book. I took online courses. I practiced presenting in front of my bathroom mirror because I was terrified of public speaking. My personal life evaporated. I stopped seeing friends. I turned down dates because I was too tired or too busy. My little studio apartment became just a place to sleep for 5 hours before going back to the office. I lived on coffee and anxiety, but I was learning. I was getting better, and I had ideas, real ideas that could help the company. Vertex was struggling. Our core product was solid, but growth had plateaued. We'd been stuck at about 3,000 customers for 8 months. Revenue was flat. The executives were getting nervous. There were whispers about layoffs, about having to find a buyer, about the possibility that we might not make it. I'd spent months analyzing our user data, and I'd noticed something nobody else seemed to see. About 40% of our users were small e-commerce businesses, but our product wasn't really built for them. They say it was built for B2, BSaaS companies. These e-commerce users were hacking our platform to make it work for their needs, using features in ways we'd never intended. I realized there was an opportunity. What if we built a specific version of our product designed for e-commerce? What if we created features specifically for online retailers, inventory sync, abandoned cart campaigns, post-purchase flows, product recommendation engines? The market was huge, and we already had proof that these customers wanted what we could build. I spent 3 months putting together a proposal. I worked on it every night after my regular work was done. I built financial projections. I researched the market. I interviewed some of our e-commerce customers to validate the need. I created mock-ups of what the features could look like. and I put together a whole go-to-market strategy. It was the best work I'd ever done. I knew it was good. I knew it could save the company. Trevor had been talking about wanting fresh thinking and innovative approaches in our team meetings, so I asked him for 15 minutes on the agenda at the next executive leadership meeting to present my idea. He seemed surprised that I'd asked, but he said yes, told me it would be good practice. For me, the meeting was on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. The entire executive team would be there: the CEO, the CTO, the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, the head of customer success, and Trevor. I barely slept the night before. I practiced my presentation 17 times. I printed backup copies of my deck in case the screen sharing failed. I wore my best professional outfit, the navy blazer I'd bought specifically for moments like this. I walked into that conference room with my laptop, my notes, and my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The executives were all sitting around the table, coffee cups in front of them, looking tired and slightly annoyed that something new had been added to their agenda. Trevor introduced me in a way that immediately undermined everything I was about to say. So Sarah wanted some experience presenting to leadership. I told her we'd give her a few minutes to share some ideas she's been working on. Let's see what our junior team members are thinking about. The way he said junior team members made it sound like he was indulging a child. I pulled up my presentation. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the mouse, but I started talking. I walked them through the data. I showed them the opportunity. I explained how we could build an e-commerce specific version of our platform. I showed them the revenue projections, an additional $4.2 million in ARR within 18 months if we executed well. I made it about 7 slides in when Trevor started laughing. Not a small laugh, a real full laugh, like I'd just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. I stopped talking. Everyone turned to look at him. "I'm sorry," he said, still chuckling. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but this is adorable. You want us to build an entirely new product line for e-commerce? Do you have any idea what that would cost? What kind of engineering resources that would require?" "I do, actually," I said quietly. "It's in the deck. Slides 12 and 13 cover the resource allocation and—" "Sarah," he interrupted, and now other people at the table were smiling too. "You're a junior PM. You've been here, 4 years? You've never shipped a major feature. You've never led a product initiative. And you think you've figured out our entire growth strategy?" The CEO, Richard Chen, was grinning. "It's nice to see enthusiasm from the junior team," he said. "But Trevor's right. This would be a massive undertaking, and honestly, the e-commerce market is incredibly crowded. Klaviyo, Omnisend, tons of established players. What makes you think we could compete?" "Because we already have the customers," I said, and I hated how my voice was shaking. "We have 1,200 e-commerce businesses using our platform right now. They're using it despite the fact that it's not built for them. That's proof of demand. We're not entering a new market. We're serving customers we already have." The VP of sales, Greg Morrison, shook his head. "Those customers are barely paying us anything. Most of them are on our cheapest tier. You want to rebuild our entire product for our lowest value customers?" "They're our lowest value customers because we're giving them the lowest value," I said. "If we built features they actually needed—" "Sarah," Trevor cut me off again, and now he wasn't laughing anymore. He looked annoyed. "I appreciate that you put work into this. I really do. But this isn't how product strategy works. We have a roadmap. We have commitments to our existing customers. We can't just pivot the entire company based on a junior PM's hunch." "It's not a hunch," I said. "I have data. I have customer interviews. I have—" "That's enough," Trevor said firmly. "We've given you your time. Thank you for the presentation. I think we can move on to the actual agenda now." Richard Chen nodded. "Thanks, Sarah. We always appreciate hearing different perspectives, but let's focus on execution on our current roadmap. Trevor, what's the update on the enterprise features?" Just like that, I was dismissed. I closed my laptop. I gathered my papers. I walked out of that conference room while they moved on to Trevor's update, like I'd never been there. I made it to the bathroom before I started crying. Not quiet tears, ugly, humiliating sobs. I'd spent 3 months on that proposal. I'd given up sleep. I'd given up any semblance of a personal life, poured everything I had into that presentation. And they'd laughed at me, treated me like a child playing dress-up in the grown-ups world. I called in sick for the rest of that day. I couldn't face going back to my desk. Couldn't face seeing Trevor. Couldn't face the possibility that other people had heard about my humiliating presentation. But of course they had. By the time I came back to the office the next day, everyone knew. The way people looked at me made it obvious. Some looked sympathetic. Most just looked uncomfortable, like they didn't want to be associated with the junior PM who'd embarrassed herself in front of the executives. Trevor called me into his office that afternoon. "Look," he said, not unkindly, "yesterday was a learning experience for you. You're ambitious. Wow, that's good, but you need to understand your place in the organization. You're still early in your career. You don't have the experience to be making strategic recommendations at the executive level." "But the data," I started. "The data doesn't matter if you don't have the credibility," he said. "That's what you need to understand. In this business, people don't listen to ideas. They listen to people. And right now, you're not someone they're going to listen to. So my advice, focus on doing your current job well. Build your credibility. And maybe in 5 or 6 years, you'll have earned the right to present big ideas." 5 or 6 years, I was supposed to keep doing grunt work for 5 or 6 more years before anyone would take me seriously. "Is there anything else?" I asked. "Just try to move past this," Trevor said. "Yeah, don't let it define you. We all have moments that don't go well early in our careers." I walked out of his office and went straight back to my desk. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen, not really seeing anything. Around me, the office buzzed with normal activity. People in meetings, people on calls, people doing work that mattered while I sat there feeling like the most worthless person in the building. The weekend was worse. I stayed in my apartment, replaying the presentation over and over in my mind. The sound of Trevor's laugh, the dismissive look on Richard's face, the way they'd moved on from my idea like it was nothing. I started questioning everything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was delusional. Maybe I didn't understand the business as well as I thought. Why, maybe I was just a junior PM who'd gotten too big for her britches and needed to be put in her place. I thought about quitting, but I had $47,000 in student loans. I had rent, I had bills, and the job market was rough. Most companies wanted senior PMs with 7 to 10 years of experience. I didn't even have that. Monday came. I dragged myself back to the office. Trevor assigned me a new project, updating the user documentation for a feature we'd shipped 6 months ago. Boring, tedious work that any intern could do. I knew what this was. Punishment, a reminder of my place. I did the work. What else could I do? But something had broken inside me during that presentation. Some belief I'd held about how the world worked. I'd thought meritocracy was real. I'd thought if you had good ideas and worked hard, you'd be rewarded. I'd thought competence mattered more than politics. I'd been wrong about all of it. The next 3 months were the darkest period of my life. I went through the motions at work, but I felt like a ghost. I'd stopped contributing ideas in meetings. I'd stopped staying late. I did exactly what was asked of me and nothing more. My performance review came up in June. Trevor gave me meets expectations across the board, not exceeds, just meets. He wrote in the comments that I needed to demonstrate more consistent judgment and understand appropriate channels for communication. No raise, no promotion, just a vague promise that if I stayed focused on my core responsibilities, I might be considered for advancement next year. I signed the review document without arguing. What was the point? But that night I did something different. Instead of going home and watching Netflix until I fell asleep, I opened my laptop and started researching. I looked up everyone who'd been in that executive meeting: Richard Chen, Greg Morrison, Trevor Hastings. I looked at their backgrounds, their previous companies, their track records, and I found something interesting. Trevor had been at Google for exactly 21 months. He'd left as an associate product manager, the same level he'd started at. He'd been at 3 companies before Vertex, staying an average of 18 months at each. He'd never actually launched a successful product. His entire career was based on that Google credential and his ability to talk confidently in meetings. Richard Chen, the CEO, had founded Vertex with venture capital money. This was his second startup. His first had failed spectacularly, burning through $8 million before shutting down. Vertex was struggling and he had no plan to fix it. These people who'd laughed at my idea, who'd dismissed me as a junior PM who didn't understand the business, they were failing. The company was dying slowly and they were too arrogant or too stupid to see the solution I'd handed them. Something shifted in me that night, not rage, something colder, a decision. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to beg for their approval. I was going to prove them wrong in a way they couldn't ignore. I started small. I created a fake email account using a generic name. I set up a basic website. And I started reaching out to those 1,200 e-commerce customers who were using Vertex's platform despite its limitations. I sent them a simple survey. What features would make our platform 10 times more valuable for your e-commerce business? I didn't mention Vertex. I didn't mention who I was. I just asked. 73 of them responded, and their answers were gold. They told me exactly what they needed, exactly what they'd pay for, exactly what was frustrating about the current platform. I compiled all of it into a spreadsheet. Every feature request, every pain point, every willingness to pay price point. Then I started learning. I'd never been technical. I'd studied business in college, not computer science, but I started teaching myself to code. I took online courses. I watched YouTube tutorials. I spent every evening and weekend learning Python, JavaScript, SQL. It was hard, really hard. I felt stupid constantly. And I'd spend 3 hours debugging something only to realize I'd missed a semicolon. But I kept going. After 2 months, I built a prototype. Nothing fancy. Just a simple tool that did one thing really well. It helped e-commerce businesses create automated email campaigns based on customer purchase behavior. One of the top feature requests from my survey. I reached out to 5 of the customers who'd responded to my survey. Would you be willing to test a new tool I'm building? It's free. I just want feedback. 4 of them said yes. I gave them access to my prototype. It was buggy. The interface was ugly, but it worked. And more importantly, it solved a real problem for them. One of them, a woman named Claire, who ran an online boutique selling handmade jewelry, emailed me after using it for a week. This is incredible. This tool made me $3,400 in recovered abandoned carts this week. When can I pay for this? She wanted to pay me for something I'd built in my apartment, something I'd built while working full-time at a company that thought I wasn't smart enough to have strategic ideas. I refined the prototype, fixed the bugs, improved the interface, added 2 more features based on user feedback. Then I did something crazy. I quit my job at Vertex. No backup plan, No other job lined up. I just walked into Trevor's office on a Tuesday morning and told him I was giving my 2 weeks' notice. He looked genuinely shocked. "Did you get another offer?" he asked. "I'm starting something on my own," I said. He laughed, the same laugh from the executive meeting. "Sarah, that's a terrible idea. Do you know how many startups fail? You have no technical background, no business experience, no funding. You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'd rather regret trying than regret staying here." I worked those 2 weeks, finished my projects, handed off my responsibilities, walked out of the Vertex office for the last time with a cardboard box containing a coffee mug and a cactus someone had given me as a secret Santa gift. I had $8,000 in savings, enough for maybe 3 months if I was extremely careful. 3 months to turn my prototype into a real business, or I'd be bankrupt and unemployed with a gap on my resume. I called my tool Cart Revive. Simple name, clear value proposition. I built out the website, set up payment processing, decided to charge $49 per month for small businesses, $149 for larger ones. Now, then I reached out to those survey respondents again. "I'm officially launching this as a product. Here's the pricing. Would you be interested?" 12 of them signed up in the first week, 12 customers, $588 in monthly recurring revenue. It wasn't much, but it was real. People were paying me money for something I'd built. I lived like a monk for the next 6 months. I moved out of my studio apartment and into a shared house with 3 roommates to cut my rent in half. I stopped eating out entirely. I cancelled every subscription I had. Every dollar I saved went back into the business. I kept building, kept improving, kept talking to customers and adding features they needed. Word started spreading in the e-commerce community. Cart Revive was solving real problems. The tool was simple but effective. Woman, I was responsive. When customers emailed me with issues or requests, I'd respond within hours, sometimes implementing their suggestions within days. Month 3, I had 42 customers. Month 6, I had 127 customers. Revenue hit $9,000 per month. Still not enough to really live on, but enough to prove this was working. I hired a freelance developer to help me build faster, then a part-time customer support person. I reinvested every dollar the business made. Month 9, something changed. A popular e-commerce podcaster featured Cart Revive in an episode about underrated marketing tools. Suddenly, I had 300 new trial signups in 1 week. I was working 18-hour days trying to keep up, onboarding new customers, fixing bugs, answering support emails, building new features. I was exhausted, but I'd never felt more alive. Now by month 12, Cart Revive had 843 customers and was generating $54,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I'd hired 2 more developers, a proper customer support person, and a part-time marketing contractor. And people were talking about it, not just customers, industry publications, competitors, investors. I got my first acquisition offer when the company was 14 months old. A marketing automation platform wanted to buy Cart Revive for $2.5 million. I turned it down. This wasn't about a quick exit. This was about building something that mattered. By month 18, we had 2,100 customers and $127,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I'd raised a small seed round from a few angel investors, $600,000 that let me hire a proper team and accelerate growth. And then I got a LinkedIn message that made me smile. It was from Greg Morrison, so the VP of sales from Vertex, who'd mocked my presentation. "Sarah, I've been following what you've built with Cart Revive. Really impressive growth. I'd love to chat about a potential partnership between Cart Revive and Vertex. Would you be open to a call?" I stared at that message for a long time. A partnership. Now they wanted to partner, after they'd laughed at the exact idea I'd pitched them 2 years earlier. I responded politely. Professional. Sure, happy to chat. How's Thursday at 2 p.m? The call was interesting. Greg spent the first 5 minutes complimenting Cart Revive, talking about how innovative it was, how it was exactly the kind of thing the e-commerce market needs. Then he got to his pitch. We're seeing more e-commerce customers coming to Vertex, and we think there could be a really strong integration opportunity between our platforms. Maybe we could bundle Cart Revive with our product, or perhaps we could even explore an acquisition conversation. That's interesting, I said carefully. When I was at Vertex, I actually proposed building something very similar to Cart Revive. Do you remember that presentation? A pause. I vaguely remember something like that, yes. You laughed at me, I said, not angry, just factual. You told me those customers weren't valuable, that the e-commerce market was too crowded, that it wasn't worth pursuing. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah, look, sometimes timing matters in business. The market's different now. We're in a different position. I'm sorry if we didn't see the opportunity then. How's Vertex doing? I asked. We're navigating some challenges, he admitted. Growth has been tough. We're looking at strategic options. Strategic options, corporate speak for we're failing and might have to sell. I'm not interested in a partnership, I said, but thank you for thinking of us. Sarah, I really think there's an opportunity here. I appreciate it, Greg, but I'm focused on building Cart Revive as an independent company. Best of luck with everything at Vertex. I ended the call and sat back in my chair. It felt good, better than I'd expected. Not because I'd rejected them, because I didn't need them at all. 2 months later, I got another message. This one from Trevor. Hey Sarah, heard you're doing great things with Cart Revive. I always knew you had potential. Would love to grab coffee sometime and catch up. And I'm actually exploring some opportunities myself and would love to pick your brain about the e-commerce space. I didn't respond. 3 months after that, I was at a tech industry conference in San Francisco. I was on a panel about building products for underserved markets. The room was packed. People were taking notes. After the panel, a line of people formed to talk to me, ask questions, exchange business cards. I was talking to a founder from Seattle when I saw him. Trevor, standing in line waiting to talk to me. When he got to the front, he smiled. That same confident smile I'd seen 1,000 times when I worked for him. Sarah, he said, that was a great panel, really insightful stuff. Thanks, I said. I wanted to let you know, he continued. I left Vertex a few months ago. Company wasn't heading in the right direction. When I'm actually advising some early stage startups now. If you ever want to chat about strategy or growth, I'd be happy to. I'm good, I cut him off, but thank you. His smile faltered. Right, well, if you ever need anything. I won't, I said, not rudely, just honestly. Good luck with everything, Trevor. I turned to the next person in line before he could respond. That's when it really hit me. The people who'd made me feel small, who'd laughed at my ideas, who'd told me I didn't have the experience or credibility to matter. They were now trying to get close to me, trying to benefit from what I'd built, trying to rewrite history like they'd always believed in me. Cart Revive kept growing. By year 3, we had 6,800 customers and were generating $940,000 in monthly recurring revenue. We'd expanded beyond just abandoned cart recovery. We'd built a whole suite of tools for e-commerce marketing automation, everything I'd outlined in that original presentation, plus features I'd learned about by actually listening to customers. I got a much bigger acquisition offer, $47 million from a major e-commerce platform. This time I seriously considered it, not because I needed the money, because it would give Cart Revive the resources to reach even more customers. But ultimately, I turned it down too. I wasn't ready to give up control. Cart Revive was mine. I'd built it from nothing. I'd built it while people laughed at me, and I wanted to see how big it could get. Year 4, we crossed $2 million in monthly recurring revenue. We had 37 employees. We'd expanded internationally. We were featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, and Inc. magazine. I was invited to speak at conferences around the world, and Vertex Digital, they were acquired for parts. Some private equity firm bought them at a fire sale price, laid off most of the team, and absorbed whatever IP was worth salvaging. Richard Chen moved on to his 3rd startup attempt. Trevor was doing freelance consulting. The company that had laughed at my idea died while the idea itself became a thriving business. But the real victory wasn't financial. It wasn't watching Vertex fail or seeing Trevor fall from his pedestal. The real victory was how I felt when I woke up each morning. I wasn't anxious anymore. I wasn't trying to prove myself to people who'd never respect me. I wasn't working for someone else's dream while mine died slowly. I'd built something real, something valuable, something mine. And I hired some of the people who'd been kind to me at Vertex, the ones who'd looked sympathetic when I left that conference room. I paid them well, gave them equity, treated them like the talented professionals they were, and I made sure that in our company, junior people were heard, that good ideas mattered more than tenure, that you didn't need an MBA from Northwestern or 2 years at Google to have valuable insights. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes, but we were building something where people's contributions actually mattered, where someone like 26-year-old me with a crazy idea would get a real hearing instead of condescending laughter. 5 years after that humiliating presentation, I was giving a keynote at a startup conference. The topic was building products for underserved markets. The room had over 2,000 people in it. I told them the story, not all of it, but enough, about presenting an idea that got laughed at, about being dismissed because of my age and experience level, about how I'd turned that rejection into fuel. The people who laughed at me weren't evil, I said. They were just blind. They'd gotten comfortable with their assumptions about how things worked, who had credibility, what ideas were worth pursuing. They stopped listening. And that's how companies die. After the keynote, a young woman approached me. She looked about 23. She was crying. "Thank you," she said. "I'm a junior PM at a startup. I proposed an idea to my boss last month and he laughed at me. I've been thinking about quitting. Your story." It helped. I gave her my business card. "If you do quit and want to build that idea, email me. I invest in founders who have something to prove." Because that's what I did now too. I'd started angel investing in founders who reminded me of myself, the ones who were underestimated, the ones who had great ideas but no pedigree, the ones who people didn't take seriously. Cart Revive is now 6 years old. We're approaching $5 million in monthly recurring revenue. We have 112 employees across 8 countries. We help over 28,000 e-commerce businesses grow. I own 73% of the company. My net worth on paper is somewhere around $180 million, though I don't think about that much. The number feels abstract. What feels real is the mission, the impact. The fact that thousands of small business owners can compete with bigger companies because we built tools that level the playing field. Last month, I got an email from Richard Chen, the former CEO of Vertex. He was raising money for his newest startup and wanted to know if I'd be interested in investing. I wrote back, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'll pass. Best of luck." Short, professional, final. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need to watch them fail or make them admit they were wrong. Their opinions of me, their laughter, their dismissal, none of it mattered anymore because I'd become exactly what they said I couldn't be. I'd built exactly what they said wouldn't work. I'd succeeded in the market they said was too crowded. And I'd done it all without them, without their approval, without their help, without their belief. That's the thing about being laughed at. It hurts in the moment. It makes you feel small and stupid and worthless. But if you can channel that pain into purpose, if you can turn their doubt into your determination, being laughed at becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Because it forces you to stop seeking approval from people who don't matter. It forces you to trust yourself when nobody else will. It forces you to build something so undeniable that eventually people have no choice but to pay attention. I was laughed at by people I thought I needed to impress, people I thought controlled my future, people I thought determined my worth, but they were wrong about me. And I proved it in the only way that matters, by building something real while they were busy protecting their egos and their failing company. I didn't become the success story they wanted me to be. I became the success story they said was impossible. And that makes all the difference. If you've ever been betrayed at work, you're not alone. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe to Office Revenge Hub for more powerful workplace revenge stories.